Nope, no introduction. Just gonna get right into the video. So, I have a boom hammer, and it just sort of keeps in the theme of this being a strength character with two hammers. This is what I call a test invasion. I was invading in Hemwick just to find a bunch of people that were probably not gonna do too much damage. So I could just test out and get acquainted a little bit more with the Boomhammer moveset. That double kill right there is not impressive at all. Um, at the time when I did do it, the thing that impressed me was the fact that it actually hit both of them. That's because the Boomhammer has a few attacks that have AoE properties to them when you have it primed or tricked, however you want to call it, when you activate the little furnace. So I had one character that was a level 130 character, quality build, and I had the Boomhammer on that one, but I never really got to use it too much in PvP, especially at that level. You don't really find too many invasions, or at least at the time when I had the character, I really didn't find too many invasions to try out the Boomhammer. So the fact that there's a lot of new players around, it's a blessing. I changed places eventually to Yahar'gul, where you'll be watching this very long, drawn-out invasion, which is something that I really adore. I love the longer fights where both sides just destroy each other's resources to the point where people just run out of bullets and blood vials and stuff like that. I find it exciting. It's a perfect example of what I've been trying to showcase in this channel as Bloodborne invasion content goes. This is the type of invasion that really just I live for it. I really like it. It's the reason I keep invading. It's the reason I'm gonna keep invading until the game is completely dead, until the game just shuts down the servers. So it turns into a 3v1, and this is way after I stopped invading in Hemwick because I got a little bit more acquainted with the moveset, and I just felt like I was bullying players too much with a boomhammer. I could have taken away the gems to make it a little bit more, fair, but I didn't want to do back and forth trips between the dream to equip and unequip gems. So I figured, well, just to balance it out, since I'm a little bit used to it a little bit more, I'm just gonna invade in a further up stage in the game. I'm gonna invade at a place where people should be higher level, and they should at least have the weapons upgraded a little bit more, so it's not too unfair. And that was the case with this invasion. I wasn't doing like one-shot tier damage to them, it was just damage. It was decent, good damage. So the reason I have a boomhammer is because I was looking for a good secondary weapon. As you've seen before, and as I've said, I had a beast cutter with this build. This is a strength build, and I'm just not good with it. That's all there is to it. I'm not good with the beast cutter. I tried it for a while. It wasn't really clicking with me. It's not a bad weapon by any means. I just think that when it comes to invasions, I have better options for my playstyle. Also, a little bit something of a side note: the beast cutter can get really easily parried if you are experiencing a lot of 2v1s or 3v1s, because if they're gun spamming, they're gonna parry you no matter what at some point, because it's so slow. So I needed something in between, that's strength based, but it's not another two-handed weapon. I'm not gonna have a Kirkhammer and the Ludwig's Holy Blade because I don't know, I didn't want that. I wanted something to have a cannon on my left hand. You're not gonna see the cannon in this one, in this video, but I eventually used the cannon. What you are gonna see is me using the pistol. Now, I wanted to try to use the pistol to punish the healing, but it wasn't really working out, and whenever I did get a parry on a heal, I didn't do any damage, because this character doesn't have any skill or dexterity, if you will. It doesn't have any, so the damage wasn't really that great. So I eventually dropped the pistol, and what I did was I instead have a cannon, and then I'll have a blunderbuss. But I'll talk about the blunderbuss and its uses in a different video. Right now I want to focus on explaining why I did the so-called test invasions. Now, if you want to get familiar with a moveset of a weapon that you really want to use for invasions, I recommend you do some test invasions. The test invasions are for just to get familiarized with the moveset of the weapon that you want to use. Also, you want to test out how much damage it actually does, how much damage translates from your AR to the opponents. You want to see exactly how much damage you're doing, especially if you're not gonna do the 27% gem farming. If you're just gonna stick to the gems that you can find in the regular PvE, specifically the DLC, then you're gonna want to test out how much damage you're doing. So you want to get used to the moves. You want to see which moves work against a single opponent, which are better for crowd control, and things like that. Which is why I decided to go with the boom hammer, also because the boom hammer scales pretty good with strength. So it was a great weapon to use. It's hammer. It keeps with the theme of it being a hammer dude, like I said, and it makes for a pretty decent crowd control weapon, I gotta say, because the Kirk hammer, the problem I have with it is that sometimes when you have a 2v1 or a 3v1 and they're rushing you so bad, you're not gonna have time for those long wind-up attacks. And really the only attack that could be considered crowd control with the Kirk hammer is the L2. And that doesn't really have too much hyper armor on it unless you throw out an R1 first. Because the hyper armor on the Kirk hammer, for some reason, it's like a gauge that fills up a little by little the more you attack. I really think that the Kirk hammer was intended to be used like in a berserk style, way of using it. You just attack, you keep attacking, and the more you attack, the more hyper armor you're gonna have. Now this is the case with the Kirk hammer, but not necessarily other bigger weapons. The Whirligig Saw, for example, has hyper armor on the very first R1, I've noticed. It usually works more against the smaller weapons, but the hyper armor is still there nonetheless. So that's one of the advantages the Whirligig has over the Kirk hammer. I think the Whirligig is a little better for crowd control in general than the Kirk hammer, because the Whirligig is just faster, has longer range. You could say that it's a better weapon, but I wouldn't say that necessarily, because the Kirk hammer has really weird timings sometimes for the way you should dodge the attacks. So if you can throw off people with that, you're gonna nail them with like really solid counter hits at the end of their dashes. You've seen it before in previous videos of mine. I constantly catch people with that L2 at the end of their dash, or I'll just unlock L2 and cover a wide range, a wide horizontal range. It's not the best range ever, but it is something to note when using the Kirk hammer. So anyway, I wanted a good secondary weapon to do some crowd control with. And really, the boom hammer is just a perfect match for the way that I like to play, for the character's theme, for the character's stats in general. Because you want to have a secondary weapon that is relevant to the stats that you have, obviously. That may sound like something obvious, but it not necessarily, because a lot of people have a pocket saw cleaver just to get people off of them. You get two guys just wailing on you, and you take out a saw cleaver, and you start to R1 mash, and just to try to get them off of you. So you really want to have something either that helps you in a different way, or a weapon that covers for the weaknesses of your primary weapon. And I went with that one. I wanted to cover some weaknesses of the Kirk hammer with the boom hammer. The boom hammer has deceptively long range with some of the R2 attacks, specifically the R2 attacks. I tested them out because I honestly had not really tested them out with my previous character. So I had to test them out with these invasions that I did in Hemwick. And what I found was that the running R2 of the boom hammer, which you're going to see a little bit more of later, the running R2 is great for catching people that are backdashing constantly in a straight line, or they're running away from you in a straight line. If you have it primed or tricked, again, like however you want to say it, it does the little AoE, which is better. Look at this. You see that? He was running away. I just catch him with a running R2. It has a very good range to it. I wouldn't have been able to do that with the Kirk hammer, which is why you saw me switch. That's again covering for a weakness that the Kirk hammer has that can be held by switching to the boom hammer. I would not have hit that guy if I kept the Kirk hammer and I did the running R2. The running R2 is just slower. It doesn't have that much range. So the boom hammer came into play and it really helped out a lot. So the dash R1 of the boom hammer is also fairly quick. It's great to hit a group of people. As you see there, I dodged the auger of Ebrietas. I'm pretty sure that's how it was confirmed to be pronounced, Ebrietas. So I dodged the auger and I basically dash back, and then you get that dash forward horizontal swing, which is great for catching people. You see again the running R2 is great to catch people off guard. And if you have it tricked, if you have it primed, you're going to have that AoE effect and the bonus damage as well. So that's always a good thing to have. Tricking the boom hammer or getting it primed, it doesn't really take time at all. It's just a couple of, it's like a second. So you always want to have it, primed and ready. The times where you don't want to have it primed already is when you know that your opponent is fairly decent, and because the attacks take more stamina when you have it primed and they take a little longer to recover, you may want to just attack normally. So that's fair enough. This guy, I think, plays too much Dark Souls. I think he was expecting me to just get hit by the spear even though I'm behind him. Because in Dark Souls, as in any Dark Souls, I'm not talking specifically Dark Souls 3, which is the one that I love to shit talk about. In all the Dark Souls, when people attack with spears, because of the, I want to say, the natural latency that the games have, that you get hit with their backside, like with their butt, and they hit you with their butt or at the side of their elbows or something, and it looks ridiculous. You see there, I was just screwing around. I stood in front of him and I threw out raw L2s with the Kirk hammer because, I don't know, I found it funny that he kept R1 mashing with the spear. So I wanted to be silly too. Difference being that I wasn't being serious and he probably was. I don't blame him because maybe he thought that it had better tracking or something like in Dark Souls, but nah. It doesn't work like that in this game, so... A little note for those of you that want to use a spear, don't R1 mash. Actually you have to try to place your hits properly. And I know that's a little bit difficult for those of you that play Dark Souls 3, because it's sort of automatic the way that spears work. You just get turned around and you let the auto aim do it for you. Look at this guy with the Holy Moonlight sword in fucking Hemwick. So I was switching between the Kirk hammer, the boom hammer, and the Worldly Jigsaw. Look at this. I don't understand how he hit me. I was so confused. I was like, what? How did you even? Because he wasn't really lagging. He didn't have like any issues with the latency or anything. So I was like, okay, maybe he unlocked it and it looked weird on my screen. I don't know. Look at that running R2 again. And I know I'm doing a lot of damage, but I don't really want to kill this guy with the boom hammer. I'm just trying to hit him with different attacks and seeing what works against human players and what doesn't. So I found that the R2s are pretty good. The R1s actually are the ones that miss a lot, which is weird because they're faster. But the only R1 that really works very well with the boom hammer, I found, was the dash forward R1. And even that gets dodged so much that I don't know. So I basically use a lot of the Boomhammer R2s because they throw people off with the timings. You throw out too many R1s, and if you noticed in the invasion in Yahar Ghul, the players that I was fighting there, they got the timing down for dodging the Boomhammer, which is why I switched to the Kirkhammer at the end of it. And then again, the Boomhammer for chasing down the host, as you saw before. But I noticed that the Boomhammer R1s are just, I don't know, people dodge them so easily, but the R2s, which are slower, they have a harder time. And maybe it's because they have more range, maybe it's because of the AoE effect. But even the raw R2s, you know, without the furnace on, without having the hammer primed, they still hit people pretty consistently. At least that's what I found. For example, look at this. He charged the R2, I just throw out a raw R2 and it just hits him. That time I know it was because of the range. But I don't know, man. I mean, it's pretty weird how the slower attacks are the ones that actually land more. I wanted to try out some Beast Cutter with this guy just for the hell of it. And I eventually switched to the Whirligig because you're gonna see why. This is a +6 Beast Cutter, and it just doesn't do any damage at all. I think it does like 40 something damage. It's ridiculous. Let me see. Yeah, 43. This video would be like 50 minutes long if I kept the fucking Beast Cutter. So I switched to the Whirligig, and I try to torture this guy with the L2. I'm not giving him the honor duel like I said in the previous video. This is not me giving him an honor duel. I just want to mess with him with the L2 because a lot of people don't know, a lot of new players I should say, they don't know how to deal with the L2 because it's just so intimidating. You just walk forward and you're just mowing the lawn and they just don't know what to do with it. So yeah, if you want to try invading and you want to do it with a weapon that you really are not too familiar with, try to do some test invasions. You know, don't worry about getting killed. Don't worry about winning or dealing with the gankers or anything. Just fight as best you can, and you collect all that data on it, and then you know what works and what doesn't work until you get a feel for the weapon. And then you can go and do your proper, you know, your proper fighting and your proper gank slaying or gank spank, however you want to call it. Right there, he gets nailed with the L2 a lot, and I think it's because he was trying to mash out of it. There's no mashing against an attack like that. Even if you have the quickest weapons in the game, like the cleavers, the Rakuyo, something like that, you're not gonna mash out of an L2 that's already hitting you. But he tried, I guess, because there's no other explanation. You need to mash out of it as soon as possible, because the L2s of the Whirligig will just eat you up if you try to contest it. So I'm just messing with this guy. And so this was all before that long Yahar Ghul invasion you saw. I just wanted to do some tests with the Boomhammer in Hemwick. And the reason I went to Hemwick was because I figured I wouldn't find as many really exaggerated co-opers, you know, the people that have the big damage and the big levels, you know, the ones that we've been talking about all this time. But I still found a few, but not as bad. Look at this. He basically killed himself. Oh god. That is unfortunate. You know, the like I mentioned before in the previous video, your actual backdash will get you caught in corners like that. That's when you want to unlock and roll away, and because you have more control of where you're going. So anyway, all these invasions were before that Yahar Ghul invasion, and that was after I got a little bit more acquainted with the moveset of the Boomhammer. I'm not telling you all to write a fucking essay on the weapon that you want to use. I'm just telling you to, you know, just study it for like 10 minutes, just make sure to know which attacks work, which don't. That's all. And the overall feel of the weapon, it should feel good when you use it, and you should feel comfortable, and you should know what it is that you're doing when you're using it. So, the other reason why I invaded, and well, not the reason that I invaded, the reason I switched to a boomhammer, I should say, is because this is the point in which I mentioned before in another video, where I was actually starting to get pissed off at the fact that I was encountering so many powerful co-opers that I needed something that was more or less an equalizer in terms of damage. So this is basically what you're seeing here is the transformation of this character in process, because after this is when I actually equip the crow feather garb to actually turn into a hunter of hunters. But the more importantly, it's when I switch to using a cannon. And the cannon is great for just deleting all co-opers. Look at that, I missed the running R2 because I was just too slow. See, that's the scumbag tactics coming into play again. I love it. I know not everyone loves it, but it just makes me smile all the time. So that's the other reason why I implemented a boomhammer into this character. And because the boomhammer has that extra AoE effect, it gets that extra damage. The weird timing of the R2s catch people off guard, and it makes them pretty much sometimes walk into the attacks. And having a cannon with you is another form of intimidation, so it makes people not want to rush you. And I found that the only people that rush me when I have a cannon out in the open with a bone marrow ash, and sometimes I'll just stand still, change from my blunderbuss to the cannon, put a bone marrow ash, all that in front of them while they're standing still watching me, to let them know that I have a cannon, to sort of say, hey, I will shoot. And not surprisingly, the people that rush in anyway are the hosts, because, host is gonna host. But yeah, the co-opers that know better, they back off and they don't rush you as bad if they know that you have a weapon that can hit them with an AoE and has a pretty decently quick R1s, and you also have a cannon in case they decide to just mash away in front of you. So keep that in mind. Just practice with your weapon, test it out. Don't worry about winning or losing invasions when you're testing it out. Just try your best with your weapon. Learn the timings. Learn which attacks work for you, which attacks don't really work. Which attacks are easier for anyone to dodge regardless of experience level. As you see there, this guy was dodging the R1s pretty good, and unlock play will help you, depending on the weapon, of course. But generally with the bigger weapons, doing some unlocking is gonna help way more. Anyway, thanks for watching. Join me in the next video, in which German will share with us his top 10 dating tips. Interesting.